This audio discusses the parallels of consultant psychiatrist Dr. Ferguson's actions in the case of the 1988 shooting known as the Osman case. This tragedy is linked to the earlier Bamber tragedies because Dr. Ferguson was consultant psychiatrist to the Osman assailant Paul Paget Lewis and also to the schizophrenic Sheila Caffell, who both had serious mental health issues before they carried out shootings. It is contended by the Jeremy Bamber campaign that if Jeremy Bamber's defence lawyers had had access to Sheila's medical records written by Dr. Ferguson, Jeremy Bamber would not have been convicted on a 10-2 majority of verdict, but acquitted, thereby exposing Dr. Ferguson to further questioning regarding Sheila's treatment for schizophrenia. In 1986, the headmaster of Homerton House School in Hackney noticed that one of his teaching staff, Paul Paget Lewis, had developed an unhealthy attachment to Osman, a pupil at the school. Paget Lewis informed the headmaster that because of this attachment he intended to leave the school and become a supply teacher. However, the deputy head, Mr. Perkins, persuaded him to stay. Paget Lewis's obsession continued, and Ahmet recalled the teacher asking him to come and see him in his classroom at lunchtimes for Ahmet to learn Turkish, and that Paget Lewis had given him money and taken photographs of him. Paget Lewis was reported to the police because he was harassing Ahmet and his family. The police gave assurances both to Mr. Osman and the school that they would protect the family. Paget Lewis began to follow a friend of Ahmed's, Leslie Green, because Ahmed spent a lot of time with his friend. Jealous of the boy's closeness, the teacher spread malicious gossip about the relationship and accused Leslie Green of being a sexual deviant. Paget Lewis had told Leslie Green that he would become very angry if anything happened to his relationship with Ahmed. As a result of his obsession with the child, on the 14th of April 1987, Paget Lewis changed his name by deed poll to Paul Ahmet Wilderim Osman. Tragically, on the 7th of March 1988, Mr. Ali Osman, Ahmet's father, was shot dead by Paget Lewis, and Ahmet was also shot, but survived. He then drove to the home of Mr. Perkins, the deputy headmaster, where he shot and wounded Mr. Perkins and killed his son. Prior to these events, on the 19th of May 1987, Paget Lewis was seen by Dr. Hugh Cameron Ferguson of the Inner London Education Authority. Dr. Ferguson reported, "This teacher must indeed give cause for concern. He does not appear ill in formal terms, nor does he seem sexually deviant. He does have personality problems, and his judgment regarding his friendship with a pupil is reprehensibly suspect." Dr. Ferguson recommended that Paget Lewis remain teaching at the school, but that he should receive some form of counselling and psychotherapy. The second examination of the teacher took place a few weeks later, in June 1987. Dr. Ferguson now recorded that Paget Lewis was angry that he was no longer allowed to contact Ahmed, and Ferguson concluded that under the circumstances he should be designated temporarily unfit to work. On the third meeting, 2 weeks later, Ferguson made additional recommendations. On the 16th of June 1987, following a further interview with Paget Lewis, Dr. Ferguson recommended that he should no longer teach at Homerton House, and that transfer on medical grounds was strongly and urgently recommended. However, on viewing the full case file, Ferguson had stated that Paget Lewis was fit to teach and displayed no clear signs of mental illness, which would have suggested that he posed a real and immediate danger to the lives of the Osmans. Following his 3 meetings with Paget Lewis, Ferguson stated he was satisfied that he was not mentally ill. On the 28th of October 1988, Paget Lewis was convicted of 2 charges of manslaughter, having pleaded guilty on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He was sentenced to be detained in a secure mental hospital without limit, pursuant to Section 41 of the Mental Health Act 1983. The Osman and Perkins families complained that the police had failed in their duty of care, and the European Court of Human Rights heard the case in 1988. The Osman and Perkins families had in fact sought to sue Dr. Ferguson, but subsequently abandoned their action against him for reasons that were never given. The European Court of Human Rights voted unanimously that there had been a breach of Article 6, Section 1, in that the police had failed in their duty of care to Ahmed and to the Osman family, and were negligent in failing to protect the life of a child, given that the police had assumed responsibility for the child's safety. £10,000 was awarded to Ahmed, and an additional £10,000 was paid to his mother, while £30,000 in costs were also awarded. Sheila Caffell's parents, Neville and June Bamber, chose Dr. Ferguson to treat Sheila as he had previously treated June Bamber for mental health issues. He first saw Sheila on the 2nd of August 1983 at St Andrew's Hospital in Northampton, and in his police statement Ferguson said that Sheila was suffering from acute psychosis and had been depressed for 18 months, which had led to an acute breakdown. He went on, "During her treatment, I found that Sheila had bizarre delusions about possession by the devil and complex ideas about having sex with her twin sons. She thought her sons would seduce her and saw evil in both of them. In particular, she thought her son Nicholas was becoming a woman-hater and was a potential murderer. She said she felt as if she was caught up in a coven of evil." In a police statement, Ferguson said that during March 1985, Sheila was readmitted urgently due to a deterioration of her mental state, and he went on to say that her behaviour was more disconnected than on her previous admittance to hospital. He put her back onto the same medication as she had previously, but this time in the form of an injection. In his initial statement he said, "I believe that Sheila would have relapsed into a state of acute psychosis, probably having a firmly held belief or delusion involving concepts of good and evil, and certainly paranoid, possibly involving her mother. Sheila is likely to have been in a disturbed psychotic state at the time of the tragedy." However, after police sought to prosecute Jeremy Bamber for the killings of the family at White House Farm, Ferguson would change his evidence, now saying that the medication that she was on would have made her over-sedated, and, "As far as I am concerned, I do not see Sheila as a violent person, and certainly not as a patient who would have committed suicide." It appears that Ferguson was afraid that he may suffer a backlash about Sheila's care, and in a statement given on the 18th of September 1985, he attempted to diminish any responsibility that could have fallen on him. Sheila was discharged on the 29th of March 1985. I was not happy about her leaving so soon and felt she needed follow-up visits from a community psychiatric nurse. Dr. Ferguson made it quite clear that he didn't feel Sheila should have left specialised hospital care. He could easily have prevented Sheila from leaving St Andrew's Hospital, or could have had her admitted to another psychiatric unit, and he made no effort to organise a community psychiatric nurse to visit her. Ferguson knew that Sheila was responsible for 2 young children, and that she had expressed to him that she had a great deal of morbid thoughts. During the trial, Ferguson recalled Sheila's concerns about her care of the twins. She was at risk of having to have sex with them or to join with them in some violence, and that she was capable of murdering them. Yet very much like in the Osman case, which would follow just 2 years later, Dr. Ferguson failed in his duty of care to Sheila and her family, releasing such a dangerous person back into the community without putting into place any suitable aftercare or help. Dr. Ferguson authorised the reduction in Sheila's medication, yet he failed to see her personally to reassess her condition, basing his decision to reduce the medication on Sheila's request, as her GP had informed him. In both cases, Dr. Ferguson had ample opportunity to protect children, their families and the public from 2 patients who had very serious mental health problems. On at least 2 occasions, in May and June of 1987, after examining Paul Paget Lewis, despite Ferguson's serious concerns about Paget Lewis's ability to cope in his job and in society, Ferguson made recommendations that Paget Lewis return to his job teaching children. Similarly, in the care of Sheila Caffell, he discharged her from a mental health hospital into the care of a GP and her family, knowing that Sheila was a user of both cocaine and cannabis, who would assume charge of her children. From Sheila's records and through contact with her parents, Ferguson knew that there was every possibility Sheila would stay at White House Farm with her children, where there were guns left unlocked. Notwithstanding this, Ferguson also knew specifically that Sheila was fearful that she would murder her children. Yet he approved her release to a tragic but avoidable end.